All right, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be a review of this knife, and this is the Civivi Spiny Dogfish. And first of all, Civivi sent this for review, and it was a knife that I was interested in checking out because it is a Gavko design, which if you're familiar with their designs, you can probably tell by the look of it. And I was interested in it as a Gavko design because as far as I can recall, I've never had one, and they are a very interesting looking knives. So they have their kind of unique style to their designs. And, you know, this has typical Civivi materials, so 14C 28N steel. Mine here is the natural G10 variant. There are several different variants with different types of handles and some coated blades and things like that, but, you know, pretty typical Civivi materials. Now, the knife is also made really well, like, you know, Civivis generally are. If you are familiar with Civivi knives, you know that they're made really well. This one came really closed smooth. Now, I will say that it developed some blade play. I was carrying and using it quite a bit, and it started to get a little loose. I didn't really notice the blade play, but I did notice that it had started to go off center, and then, you know, I checked and it had some blade play. So I adjusted it, and now it's back to very, very smooth, pretty much perfectly centered. I didn't really want to tighten it down anymore because it was tight enough. There's no play now, but it didn't get quite all the way back to perfectly centered. It did come pretty much perfectly centered, so I don't know if that was just how I did it or what, but it did, you know, adjust and tighten back up pretty much to my liking. Now, when I took this screw out here, it didn't have any thread locker on it, so I did put some blue Loctite so that it'll stay in there a little bit better, hopefully. But the lockup itself, when fully open, is nice and solid. No forward and back play and no side to side now that I've adjusted it. And it is, you know, pretty easy to open with your thumb or with a middle finger flick like so. I'll talk about this opening method a little bit more later. Now, the grind on this knife, it seems a little bit thicker than other Civivis. So Civivi, one of the things that I really like about Civivi knives is that although they are budget friendly, and for the record, this knife is going to be about $60. Of course, you can get it in the Civivi official store, which will be linked in the description, and you can use my code for a little bit of a discount, but it'll be right around $60, so pretty budget friendly. But I really like that Civivi makes budget friendly knives that are well ground, that are ground nice and thinly for slicing. And it's not that this knife isn't ground thinly compared to other modern knives, it's just not ground quite as thin as a lot of other Civivis are. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but if you look at the heels of the sharpening on these blades, you can see that there's quite a difference in the thickness here versus here on these knives. So the Elementum is quite a bit thinner, and then I'll show you a little bit bigger knife here. This is the Wyvern. The same deal, it's definitely thinner behind the edge than the Spiny Dogfish is. So that's one thing that, you know, you could maybe get a little bit more toughness out of this knife because it's thicker, but I think I would prefer it to be a little bit thinner like the other Civivis that I have. Now, that might be because of this really interesting and very Gavko looking grind. It's a compound grind, so there is a grind here. This feels like a flat grind to me. I'm not sure if it is a flat grind or a hollow grind, and this feels like a little bit more of a hollow grind. I'm not sure if they're hollow or flat or what, but they definitely have two different grind, you know, kind of vectors or dimensions or angles or however you want to say it, and it makes it so that it has this compound grind look to it. So it's very interesting. I don't know how much of a practical thing it is. I think it is probably more of an aesthetic thing, just getting that kind of interesting look to it. But if that's something that, you know, appeals to you, then this definitely has it. And, you know, Gavko design knives can be a lot more expensive than $60. So, you know, you can get that cool look, that unique look that this has for a much lower price than a lot of other knives that have that design. Then moving on to the handle, another thing that is very, you know, typical for a Gavko knife is this, what you might call a rock texture. So it's not just a normal flat handle like a lot of Civivis have. So again, here is the Elementum 2. This is the button lock version of the normal size Elementum. And it has, you know, just a typical flat G10 handle. If you look at the Spiny Dogfish, it has this rock pattern. And I do really like that. It's something that, you know, I remember when this type of pattern kind of first was coming out on, you know, knives, and it's something that you only saw on, you know, higher end knives and customized knives and things like that. So it's cool to see this pattern coming to, you know, more budget friendly knives like this. And then of course, beyond the texturing of the handle, the shape of the handle itself is very spiny, right? So I think that it's named well, the Spiny Dogfish. It definitely has, you know, some peaks to the handle here. And when I first saw this knife and Civivi asked if I was interested in reviewing it, you know, I wasn't sure how I would feel about this handle, but in use, it actually feels pretty good. I found that I typically just have my index finger in this main kind of scallop here, and then my other 3 fingers kind of fit right down in this larger scallop, and my thumb sits pretty nicely on that ramp there. So in like a, you know, a stronger grip here, a pinch type grip, it feels pretty good. And then often I would use it like this, and it definitely felt good in that grip. You can see my pinky and ring finger fit down in here in this longer cutout area, and then my middle finger fits in this main, and then just kind of pinching like this. And you can use this area here as a finger choil. So I was a little bit concerned that the handle might not be very comfortable. If you watch my channel, you know that I think that a simple handle makes for an ergonomic handle. And this isn't the most simple of handles, but it actually feels pretty good. I didn't have any trouble in use with, you know, it being uncomfortable or not being able to get like a good feeling grip or anything like that. It feels pretty good. Now, overall, I think that this is a knife that would be good to, well, one last thing that I want to talk about before I get into my overall thoughts. So one thing is that this type of opening method, this kind of blade slot, is not my favorite type of opening method. And the reason for that is because it's hard to flick this type of blade opening hole with your thumb. For me, it's difficult to get a flick. What you have to do is push into it and really kind of manipulate it the whole way. And I think, to be honest, that that's why this started to get loose, is because, you know, you do have to put a little bit more pressure into it than if you could just kind of flick it open. Now you can flick it open, well, that's not a good example. You can flick it open relatively easily with your, you know, middle finger on the back, but I have trouble flicking this type of opening slot open with my thumb. So you have to kind of press into it, and I do think that that's probably why it loosened up a little bit. But it works, and it, you know, doesn't make it so you have to get permission from Spyderco or at least be the target of their ire or whatever. But either way, and it is typical of Gavko designs. Now, just like on, you know, I feel the same way about that type of opening on the Wyvern. You know, you have to press into it and everything, and you can't really flick it open very well. But on the Wyvern, you do have the flipper. So whereas on the Spiny Dogfish, you do not have the flipper. So just be aware of that. If you're used to this type of opening method, then it won't be a problem for you. I'm not as used to it, so it wasn't as intuitive for me. But overall, I think that this is a really unique looking knife. I think that it's an opportunity for someone who doesn't want to spend, you know, $200, $300, $800, however much, you know, the higher end collaborations that Gavko does and their kind of custom or in-house knives go for. You want to spend $60 and get a very Gavko-esque not esque, but actually a very typical Gavko design knife, then I think the Spiny Dogfish is a good option for you. If this is your type of, aesthetic, then you're really not going to find it for, less than about $60 like this Spiny Dogfish is. And also, Civivi is well known in the industry at this point for making knives very well. So you're going to get a good value in the quality that you get for the price. And also, I think the main thing here is if you want this type of design, this Gavko design for a budget price, then the Spiny Dogfish is a good option. So thanks again to Civivi for sending this. Like I said, I will post a link in the description to where you can get this and a discount code that you can use. So make sure you check that out. Also check out my other videos, subscribe to the channel and select all. Click the bell and select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this. Where is it? knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. My other social media, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, and you can use the hashtag #ThinkKnifeThoughts. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.